in the bustling kitchen of the Glass Ember, one of Portland's finest restaurants. Executive Chef Julian Cross stood towering over a new hire, his tone dismissive, his smile cruel. He gestured toward the prep station with a flick of his hand. "You," he barked, "make a beef Wellington." The red-haired woman blinked, surprised. She looked too modest, too plain to be standing in that upscale kitchen. Just an average cook, or so it seemed. But Julian had no idea who he was talking to. Lena Rowe wasn't just some timid newcomer. She was a culinary legend in disguise. Just a few years ago, she ran the kitchen at Salani, a French restaurant in Lyon that earned 3 Michelin stars faster than any other in history. Her version of beef Wellington had once made a hardened critic cry, a dish described as divine, almost untouchable in execution. But fame comes at a price. Burned out from years of pressure, Elena vanished from the public eye at just 32. Now 34, she had returned to the culinary world, but not to reclaim the spotlight, to find joy again. She walked into the Glass Ember that morning, her auburn hair tied back in a plain ponytail. No makeup, no designer gear, just black pants and a crisp white shirt. "I'm looking for a line cook position," she told the hostess. Using only her middle name, Lena Rowe, she was gathering material for a book, one about healing through food, and she was doing it undercover. She'd dyed her naturally blonde hair. She'd kept herself out of food magazines and TV shows in Europe. Most Americans wouldn't recognize her, even if they tried. Have you ever experienced something like this? Let us know in the comments and where you're watching from. Your story matters too. Chef Julian barely looked at her resume. At 42, he was feared as much as he was respected. Tall, intense, and known for running his kitchens like boot camps. "Any experience?" he asked, his icy stare fixed on her. "A bit of training in France," Lena answered simply. "Mostly worked in small places." He scoffed. "We've got a James Harmon dinner tomorrow. Prep vegetables today. Try not to ruin anything." She smiled politely. "Thank you for the opportunity." All morning, she worked in silence, observing, learning the rhythms of the kitchen. Julian criticized everything, returned dishes for minor flaws, claimed every success as his own. More than once, Lena watched him ruin plates by adding fussy, unnecessary touches before service. During lunch, he hovered over her station. "That's not how we cut here," he snapped. "This isn't a roadside diner." She nodded, even though her knife technique had been taught by a Japanese chef who spent 5 decades perfecting it. By mid-afternoon, the rest of the team was watching her, some with pity, others with curiosity. No one knew that the quiet woman in the corner was taking notes, not just for dinner, but for her upcoming book. Beneath the apron, "What's Broken in American Kitchens?" Beef Wellington wasn't just any dish. It was a test of precision, timing, and instinct. The pastry had to be perfectly golden, thin, and crisp. The beef needed to stay a flawless medium rare. And the mushroom duxelles rich in flavor, but never soggy, never dry. "I've never prepared your version before, sir," Lena said quietly. Julian's smirk returned. "Exactly. Let's see how much that French training is worth. You either get it right, or you're out." As she stepped toward the station, sous chef Daniel leaned in and whispered, "He's setting you up." No one's allowed to touch his Wellington. A few cooks exchanged glances. They knew this routine. Julian had a habit of using public humiliation as a form of control. Lena scanned the recipe left on the counter. It was fine, technically correct, but sterile. His duxelles used common mushrooms, bland creminies instead of the wild forest blend she'd mastered in Europe. The puff pastry recipe lacked the extra lamination that created true flakiness. There was no mention of resting time, temperature control, or flavor layering. As Julian walked away, smug and certain she would fail, Lena felt something shift inside. That familiar calm, the one that came right before she created. Something unforgettable. This wouldn't just pass his test. It would rewrite his expectations. She started collecting ingredients, her movements precise and focused. The kitchen staff watched, curious. The quiet prep cook had suddenly become someone else entirely. She tightened her apron, took a breath, and began. She had just under 3 hours. All around her, people glanced her way as Julian circled like a shark. He clearly expected a meltdown, but she was calm, grounded. Lena checked the beef first, running her hand over the cut. Good quality, not exceptional, but workable. Then came the mushrooms, pastry, seasonings. She took mental notes, calculating how to bring out the best in each. Julian leaned on the counter, smirking. Need help figuring out where to begin? She didn't flinch. No, thank you. I'm just evaluating the ingredients. It's Wellington, not rocket science, he announced loudly. For someone like you, it might feel like the same thing. A few cooks grimaced. Daniel shot her a look of quiet support. Julian kept pacing near her station, pointing out fake flaws. Chop the mushrooms finer. This isn't a casserole. Lena gave a small nod, but didn't change a thing. She sautéed the mushrooms gently, then added a splash of Madeira she'd found in a corner cabinet. It wasn't in his recipe, but it added complexity, a layer of warmth. Every movement was deliberate, measured, fluent, and slowly. The others began to notice. Julian's jabs weren't landing. Lena wasn't flustered, not even close. In fact, she handled each step with a kind of grace that only came from years of true mastery. She never weighed or measured. She felt, she smelled, she knew. When she seared the tenderloin, she didn't glance at a timer. She turned it by sight, judging the crust, listening to the sizzle, watching the color shift. You're going to overdo it, Julian muttered, arms crossed. Without pausing, Lena answered evenly. It needs another 20 seconds. That's how you get a proper Maillard reaction. Julian's eyes narrowed. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. A flicker of doubt passed over his face as he continued to watch in silence. The kitchen began to shift. Other stations kept moving, but all eyes slowly drifted back to her. Lena worked in a rhythm that didn't need thinking. It was pure muscle memory. Every motion, fluid, deliberate, unrushed, as she prepared the mushroom filling. She didn't follow Julian's instructions blindly. She enhanced it subtly, but deliberately. She added caramelized shallots just to the edge of sweetness, a pinch of fresh thyme, a splash of cognac that ignited in a brief, golden flame before melting into the mix. The smell that rose from her station turned heads. Cooks paused as they passed, inhaling with interest. That's not my recipe. Julian cut in, his voice tighter now. You're right, Lena said calmly. I made a few adjustments to support the beef's profile. My Wellington doesn't need fixing, he snapped. She gave him a soft smile. It's not a fix. Think of it as a variation. The beef, now perfectly seared, rested near her station. Lena turned her focus to the pastry. Her fingers moved, with elegance and speed, weaving a lattice so intricate, so exact, that nearby staff stopped what they were doing just to watch. Sue's chef, Nathan leaned closer once Julian had stepped away. Where'd you learn that? He whispered. She kept her eyes on the dough. A little place in Mistral Glen, she replied, leaving out the part where she had invented the very technique that many pastry chefs had since copied. Then came assembly. Lena worked with surgical precision. She wrapped the tenderloin in prosciutto, then layered the mushroom blend over it. The puff pastry closed around it without a wrinkle, without a gap, not a single tear. It was flawless. Even Julian couldn't find fault. You'll need to egg wash it twice, he remarked, grasping at something to correct. She nodded, then brushed it a second time, and finished with a dusting of flaky sea salt, her trademark touch. From her days in Europe that she worked, something shifted in the air. The laughter, the quiet judgment that had filled the kitchen earlier, they faded. Respect began to take its place. Even Julian's stance changed, less aggressive, more watchful, uncertain. When Lena slid the Wellington into the oven, she didn't start a timer. Julian's brow furrowed. You're not timing it. I'll know when it's done. 42 minutes. 400 degrees, he insisted. She shook her head gently. This one's 38. The pastry thickness and internal meat temperature shift the bake time. Julian stared at her, longer than before. For the first time, he seemed to really see her as the Wellington baked. Lena moved on, breaking protocol again. She began preparing accompaniments. Normally, Julian assigned those to other cooks. She crafted a red wine and veal reduction, finished with a knob of European-style butter that gave it a mirror-like shine. She glazed baby carrots in honey and thyme, roasting them until their sweetness deepened, just past al dente. Julian said nothing, but he watched everything. The staff picked up on it, too. Something didn't add up. This woman, the one who came in asking for a line cook job, moved like she'd been born in a kitchen. Sous chef Nathan approached quietly. "Chef," he said to Julian, "there's something strange about her. The way she cuts, the way she tastes. It's like what?" Julian snapped. Nathan hesitated, then answered softly, "Like watching a master." Julian's eyes narrowed. Julian pulled out his phone, scrolling with increasing urgency. Each swipe seemed to deepen the crease on his forehead. At exactly 37 minutes, Lena moved toward the oven. Julian glanced at his watch. "It's only been 37, he called. "It's ready," she replied calmly. "You can't possibly know that." For the first time, Lena turned to face him without the veil of politeness. Her tone shifted. "The pastry has reached optimal coloration. The beef inside will read exactly 128 degrees Fahrenheit, rising to 132. During rest, a textbook medium rare. The aroma confirms caramelization is complete, and the prosciutto hasn't over-wintered." The kitchen went still. No one ever spoke to Chef Julian like that, especially not a prep cook on day 2. Even more shocking was the precision in her vocabulary, the kind used by seasoned executive chefs, not line cooks. Lena held his gaze. Something unspoken passed between them. She could keep pretending, or show him the truth without breaking eye contact. She opened the oven and pulled the Wellington. From inside, it was golden, glossy, perfect. She placed it gently on the marble to rest. The lattice glowed with even browning. The structure held beautifully. An intoxicating aroma filled the room. 7 minutes to rest before slicing, she announced, not as a suggestion, but as fact. Julian stared at the Wellington, then back down at his phone. His face had gone pale. "Your name's not Lena Rowe," he said slowly. "You're Alina Rowe, from Solini." She gave a modest smile. "I go by both." "You're not just trained in France," he continued, voice strained. "You're the Alina Rowe, 3 Michelin stars, Hendricks Prize winner, international culinary delegate." Gasps rippled through the room. Cooks who had been feigning disinterest turned fully toward her. One nearly dropped a tray of connaps. "Guilty," Lena replied, removing her apron. "I've been on a sabbatical the past 2 years. That's impossible." "A young line cook," murmured Alina Rowe, "is a legend. She's like the Michael Jordan of cuisine." Lena grinned, gently playful. "Well, I'm standing right here, and I'd argue Michael Jordan is the me of basketball." A few nervous laughs bubbled up. The tension eased, but not for Julian. He didn't laugh. He didn't smile. His expression had soured a blend of disbelief and bruised ego. "Why are you here?" he demanded. "To steal recipes, spy on my kitchen." Lena raised one brow. "I'm writing a book on the soul of American kitchens, on how to rediscover joy in cooking." She glanced around the space. "Though, to be honest, this kitchen doesn't seem to have much of that." Before Julian could reply, Nathan stepped toward the resting Wellington. "May I?" he asked. Lena nodded. "It's ready." With steady hands, Nathan sliced into it. A perfect cross-section emerged. The pastry crisp, golden light. The duxelles rich and aromatic. The beef pink, glistening. Juices pooling without flooding. "Mon Dieu," Nathan breathed, slipping into French without realizing. Julian stared at the slice. His trained eyes searched for flaws. There were none. The conflict on his face was almost painful to witness. His pride was battling with truth. Lena reached for a small tasting spoon and dipped it into the deep red sauce she had crafted just hours earlier. Lena tasted the sauce with a critical eye, then added a single grain of sea salt and stirred gently. "Perfect," she said softly. Then, with the quiet command of someone who once led the most prestigious kitchen in Lyon, she gave the order. Plate it. The guests are waiting. As the finished Wellington left the kitchen in the hands of the lead server, a hush settled over the room. The staff moved, mechanically, pretending to work, while stealing glances at the unfolding tension between two chefs. Julian finally spoke. This is outrageous. You came into my kitchen under false pretenses. You humiliated me in front of my team. I never meant to humiliate you. Lena interrupted, calm but firm. I came here to learn, to observe. Every kitchen has something to teach. Julian narrowed his eyes. And what exactly have you learned here? She paused for a beat. That technical skill alone doesn't make great food. Your recipes are precise. Your execution is flawless. But something's missing. Julian stepped forward, his voice rising. And what might that be? Heart, she said, simply. You cook to impress, not to connect. Each dish is a display of talent, but not of passion. The kitchen froze again. No one had ever dared speak to Julian that way. Not here, not in his kitchen. He shot back, his voice sharp. That's rich. Coming from someone who walked away from her restaurant at the height of her fame, couldn't handle the pressure of keeping those stars. For the first time, Lena's expression cracked, a flash of honesty beneath the calm. I left because cooking became about stars, about critics, about expectation, not about feeding people. She glanced around. Look at your staff. They're afraid of you, not inspired by you. Julian's gaze flicked across the kitchen. Most eyes quickly turned away, but the truth lingered in the silence. Your Wellington recipe has so much potential, Lena said gently. The bones are there, but you've started playing it safe. You're meeting expectations instead of challenging them. Where's the chef who earned his first star by taking risks? Before Julian could answer, the dining room manager burst in, his expression lit with excitement. Chef, the guests at table 1 are asking about the Wellington. They're calling it the best they've ever had. A member of the Hendricks committee wants to meet the chef who prepared it. All eyes turned to Julian. His face shifted through a storm of emotion, frustration, pride, humiliation, and then something quieter. Recognition. Through the kitchen doors, they could hear clapping, murmurs of praise. Excitement. The dish was a triumph. Undeniable. Julian stood frozen, the applause outside pulling against the pride within. Finally, he spoke. Miss Rowe prepared the Wellington, he announced, the words slow and heavy. She deserves the credit. Lena looked at him thoughtfully. Chef Cross, she said gently, in my experience, the best dishes come from collaboration, not competition. She turned to the manager. Please let the guests know their Wellington was prepared by Chef Cross and his team. It's his kitchen, his menu. Julian stared at her, genuinely confused. Why would you do that? Because this isn't about ego, Lena said quietly. It's about remembering why we fell in love with cooking in the first place. The tension in Julian's posture seemed to ease, just slightly. For the first time, he looked at her, not as a threat, but as a fellow chef. He hesitated, then cleared his throat. Would you show me how you made that mushroom filling? The depth of flavor was extraordinary. The request was quiet, humble, real, and it shifted the entire energy of the kitchen. A few cooks exchanged surprised looks as Lena smiled warmly. Of course, she said. And maybe you can show me how you pulled off that incredible scallop dish. The sear was flawless. For the next hour, while dinner service carried on, the two chefs stood side by side. Lena walked Julian through her process, explaining each step with clarity and purpose. Julian, stiff at first, began to loosen. He asked questions. He listened. He offered insights of his own. The staff watched, stunned, as their stern commander transformed into a collaborator, a leader. When Lena suggested a tweak to one of his sauces, Julian didn't snap. He tasted, paused, then nodded. You've been using French reduction technique a bit too strictly, she said gently. American ingredients play by different rules. You've got to adjust for water content, natural sweetness, even acidity. I never thought of that. Julian admitted. By the time the last dish left the pass, the kitchen was something new, disciplined, but also alive, focused, but human. The next 2 weeks brought more of the same. Collaboration, curiosity, respect. Fear was no longer the default. Ideas flowed. Julian still upheld his high standards, but now he taught instead of intimidated. On her final day, Lena stood once more in the kitchen of the glass ember. It was unrecognizable from the place she'd walked into. There was laughter now, lightness, teamwork. "I still can't believe you're leaving," Nathan said, helping her close her notebook. "My research here is done," Lena replied with a smile. "I've got 6 more restaurants to visit before the book is ready." Julian approached, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "The publisher called again," he said. "They're asking about your next cookbook." "And yours," Lena reminded him. "Our collaboration." He nodded, a spark of excitement in his voice. "I've been testing those fusion dishes we talked about. They're actually working." The kitchen doors swung open as servers entered for pre-service briefing. One carried a silver tray, that night's special, a new take on beef Wellington, developed by Julian and his team. It combined his precision with Lena's soul. "Your legacy will stay here," Julian said quietly, offering his hand. Lena shook it firmly. "Not my legacy. Just proof of what happens when we cook with both skill and heart." As she walked out, Lena heard something that had been missing her first days there. Julian's laughter, not cruel, not forced, genuine, rising above the clatter of pans as he worked with his team, creating something special together. If this story moved you, remember this: true mastery isn't just about skill, it's about humility and heart. Next time you enjoy an unforgettable meal, pause for a second. Appreciate the hands, the minds, and the passion behind it. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. And if this journey into the culinary world inspired you, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove the greatest lessons often come from the most unexpected teachers.